This arrangement is sumptuously packed with gorgeous orchestrations and deploys numerous Beatlesy signifiers. But what about that missing verse? In my original review, I described this song as profoundly moving. I find it almost quite devastating on an emotional level. I'm reminded of a wonderful quote by Norman Cousins that said, "Death is not the greatest loss, it's what dies within us while we live." And he's absolutely right, of course, echoing, if I may quote another eminent philosopher, Rocky Balboa, "The older I get, the more I've got to leave behind." And therein lies the emotional pull of this song. That wasn't apparent, I think, on the original reworkings of those John Lennon demos in the 1990s. But now with AI technology, John is very much there in the room with them, miraculously bright, clear and alive, which is just astounding to hear, especially as he sounded so muted and uninterred on the original anthology series. What we get here is a very emotional resurrection in some respects. Of course, his voice was already isolated, I think, for the recent Paul McCartney shows where he duos with Lennon on I've Got a Feeling. But what's interesting, and I quite like the fact that they've kept McCartney's voice quite low in the mix. Not merely, I think, to platform John's voice, which should be platformed, but I think also the fact that McCartney's voice has aged dramatically since '94, since they recorded those original songs. So I think with this song we feel McCartney's presence, but we don't notice it directly. And this, of course, has been much better received, I think, than Free as a Bird and Real Love. And that may well be because you're appealing to an ageing demographic that now fully understands the impact of loss on their lives as opposed to 30 years ago. And those original songs from the 90s, Free as a Bird and Real Love, were not greeted with the enthusiasm I think the Beatles hoped for. One critic described Free as a Bird as a dirge. There wasn't that outpouring of love for these songs I think that McCartney had perhaps hoped for. And that was rather odd, really. This was the 90s, Britpop was all the thing, so the Beatles' stock was riding quite high at this juncture. Of course, Free as a Bird was released, I suspect, with the view of securing that #1 spot over Christmas, but of course was denied that by Michael Jackson's Earth song, which must have been particularly galling for McCartney, I think. And by its second week, it was actually Boyzone and their reworking of Cat Stevens' Father and Son that prevented it from going any further up the charts. And Real Love didn't fare that much better, dropping out of the top 10 quite quickly, and it certainly didn't help with Radio 1 refusing to play it, prompting McCartney to pen a rather angry letter to the Daily Mirror, decrying the station's kindergarten kings, fuming at the station's obvious ageism a la status quo, of course. But the problem with those original recordings is they did the best they could with the technology available, but unfortunately Lennon's voice still sounds quite ghostly on them, which might work or not work, really depends on how you come at it. But I personally would like to see, with the AI technology that's now available, I would like to have seen them rework those two songs. Now and then, of course, famously Harrison objected to it, calling it effing rubbish. It's hard to see why he objected to it. It doesn't seem like effing rubbish to me when I listen to it. As I said, I found it profoundly moving. Now, if we think about Now and Then, it's obviously a song written about his love for Yoko, Now and Then I Miss You. But there's an interesting verse or bridge section where Lennon talks about, I don't want to lose you, I don't want to abuse you. However, as the Beatles, McCartney has removed that, and you can understand why he's removed it. The song is Lennon's personal reflection on his love for Yoko. What McCartney has done by removing that verse is he's turned it into a wider meditation on loss. And let's be honest with you, in terms of loss and grief, I think that's felt quite profoundly by not only by the Beatles themselves, by the fans of this band. And he's very much playing to that sentiment, which is why this song is full of Beatlesy motifs, from the lifting of vocal parts or choral parts from the classic songs, to little sections that, is a nod to a specific song or moment. And why not? I don't find it exploitative or manipulative in any way. I just think I take it as a genuine expression of remembrance and loss for a friend and bandmate. I don't think it's, some of you in the comments on my last video said, oh, it's just a cash cow. I don't buy that for 1 minute, simply because the sheer volume of money McCartney is sitting on, as well as Ringo. I don't think they've done this with any idea of financial gain in mind. I think they've just done it as a last tribute to that band, that collective that they once were. Why this is more important than we think, namely, this is not just another Beatles track or a bit of technical clever cloggery, but it's very much about the bond that this band once shared. And this song enables them to express a yearning for that bond. And another reason why it's important from a technological perspective is that it opens the floodgates as to what is possible with this technology. I've said it before, there are audience bootlegs out there from lots of classic bands that sound a lot better than that Lennon demo for sure. It'd be interesting to see if they can apply that technology to those. I'm sure there's a lot of money in it, especially some of the bigger, more well-known bands, I think. So I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing that a little bit further down the road. Pink Floyd have, of course, bought up or secured ownership of all those bootleg recordings from about 1970 to 73 so far. I wouldn't be surprised if there's something in the can for us in the future. So to go back to that demo, when Lennon sung those lines way back in 77, 78, those heartfelt lines to Yoko, "Now and then I still miss you," there's no way he could have appreciated the profundity of that lyric all those years later, given the context of the Beatles and where they are now. So I take this song as a profoundly moving meditation on loss. I'd love to know what your thoughts are. Anyway, if you're new to this channel, please do click like, subscribe, and check that notification bell so you get notified of any future uploads. And check some of the links below the video for ways you can support the sterling work done at Classic Album Review. It's always much appreciated. Become a Patron, why not? It's a fine body of work on there now. So I will leave you with my usual closing salvo, which is I hope you're well. Not too miserable, I hope. Staying safe, and of course, hope you keep listening.